They pushed an old man down, then froze when they found out who he really was. He sat quietly on a park bench, unnoticed by the world around him. Just an old man in a faded cap, leaning on a cane. No one knew his name. No one cared to ask. Until one careless act of cruelty awakened something long buried and revealed a brotherhood that never forgot. This is the powerful, true story of Franklin Ward, a decorated U.S. Marine who carried 11 soldiers through enemy fire and never once asked for recognition. For over 50 years, he walked among us invisible until the day he made one quiet phone call, and the world finally remembered who he really was. If you believe that no hero should be forgotten, comment, respect below, and subscribe to our channel for more true stories of dignity, sacrifice, and justice that comes when you least expect it, but exactly when it's needed most. The heat shimmered off the pavement like waves of glass as Franklin Ward pulled into the corner gas station. His 1969 Dodge D100 groaned in protest, a wheezing relic of a different era, its faded red paint sun peeled and flecked with rust. Like the man behind the wheel, the truck bore the scars of time, but it still moved with purpose. Franklin, 82 years old, parked beside pump number 3. He moved slowly, stiffly, like a man used to pain. His cane tapped against the concrete as he climbed down from the driver's seat. A worn Marine Corps cap shielded his eyes from the blazing sun, the same cap he'd worn through places and times the world had long forgotten. His khaki pants were clean but faded, and his boots, once polished to perfection, now bore the scuffs of long walks no one cared to notice. Nearby, 4 young men in sleeveless shirts and mirrored sunglasses lounged on sport bikes by the air pump. Their laughter rang out sharp and careless, echoing across the asphalt. "Yo," one of them sneered, nodding toward Franklin's truck. "That thing, even legal, looks like it belongs in a museum, maybe next to a T-Rex." Another laughed. "Bet he's still fighting World War I in that helmet." Franklin said nothing. He didn't glance their way. He had once marched through monsoon rain under sniper fire with a busted radio strapped to his back. The words of bored boys didn't carry weight. He simply adjusted his cane, pulled his wallet from his back pocket, and began the slow walk to the convenience store. Inside, the cashier didn't look up from her phone. Franklin handed her a few neatly folded bills. Exact change. For gas and a bottle of water. She muttered a robotic, "Have a good one," still scrolling, eyes never meeting his. Back outside, the sun bore down like judgment. Franklin uncapped the tank, his hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the slow betrayal of age. He didn't hear the bikers approach until one of them circled behind him, the scent of sweat, cologne, and arrogance thick in the heat. "That truck even start anymore," one jeered. Franklin's answer was calm. "Still runs." Something in that quiet confidence poked the wrong nerve. "Still talks too," the biker snapped, and shoved him. Franklin fell. It wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no cursing. He crumpled with effort against the concrete, a soft grunt escaping as his hip struck hard. His cap slipped from his head. For a moment, the world went silent. But only for a moment. Traffic continued to pass. A car honked somewhere in the distance. No one came running. Franklin didn't cry out. He didn't curse. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled himself back up, one hand bracing against the open door of his truck, the other pressed against his side. His jaw clenched against the pain, his breath shallow. He got in, closed the door, and drove away, without a word. The sun glared in his rearview mirror as the gas station faded behind him. No one chased after him. No one stopped the boys. No one noticed the old Marine who had once carried men on his back through jungle fire had just been thrown to the ground by children who had never carried anything heavier than their pride. Before the years bent his back and silence became his constant companion, Franklin Ward had a name spoken with force. Staff Sergeant Ward, Echo 7, Recon, Vietnam. His boots had sunk into red jungle mud, his hands once steady enough to disarm minds by feel. He was 22 the first time someone shot at him. He was 23 the first time he carried a bleeding man over his shoulders through enemy fire, and didn't stop even when his own leg had been hit. Franklin never liked talking about the war. Not because he was ashamed of what he did, but because no one really wanted to listen. Not to the real parts. Not to the blood in your boots or the look in a dying man's eyes. And certainly not to what came after. In 1971, during an operation known only to those who were there as Iron Vow Franklin's unit, Echo 7 was sent to retrieve intelligence behind enemy lines. The mission was compromised. They were ambushed in the jungle and trapped for over 48 hours. Franklin, already wounded, refused evacuation. He stayed behind and covered their retreat alone, firing from a rocky hillside until the rest of his team was airborne. He saved 11 lives. The Silver Star came quietly handed to him in a plastic box he kept buried in a drawer. He never displayed it. To him, it wasn't about the medal. It was about the faces he still remembered, the ones who didn't make it back. After his discharge, he married Evelyn, the nurse who once helped change his bandages in Saigon. They settled in a modest home just outside the city. They had a son, Jonathan, a quiet boy with his mother's eyes and Franklin's stubborn heart. Life was small, but good. Until Evelyn got sick. The cancer came fast and unforgiving. It devoured her from the inside before doctors could even agree on what was wrong. She died within months. Franklin didn't cry at the funeral. He'd promised her he wouldn't. Then just a few years later, Jonathan, a mechanic like his dead Ted, was killed by a drunk driver. 29 years old, newly engaged. That's when Franklin stopped speaking much at all. He sold the house, gave most of the money to a veterans hospice Evelyn once volunteered for, and disappeared into a quiet routine of survival. No pension checks, no VA visits, just a battered truck, a cane, and the same faded jacket he had worn for years. In his inside pocket, Franklin kept two things: a laminated photo and an old contact card. The photo showed 8 young men, all grinning through grime and exhaustion, standing shoulder to shoulder in front of a field tent deep in Vietnam. On the back, in fading ink, Echo 7, the ones who came back. The card was yellowed with time, laminated, creased, but intact. It bore no rank, no logo, just a phone number and the words "emergency use only." Unit Echo 7, no questions, direct contact. Franklin had never used it. Not when Evelyn died. Not when Jonathan died. Not when he spent 2 nights in the ER from pneumonia. Not when his truck was vandalized in the winter of '09. He had always believed in taking care of things himself. No handouts, no noise, no complaining. He figured the world had changed, and maybe there was no room left in it for men like him. But in the quiet corners of the park, beneath rustling oaks and chirping cicadas, when no one was looking, Franklin would take out that photo and stare at his younger self. Straighter, faster, leaner. But the eyes were still the same. Eyes that had seen too much and remembered even more. The engine knocked twice as Franklin pulled into the narrow lot behind Fulton's Auto Repair, a squat brick shop wedged between a vape store and a shuttered laundromat. He let the truck idle for a moment, listening to the familiar rattle that had grown louder over the past week. Then, with a quiet grunt, he shut it off. The sun had risen higher now, casting harsh light across the oil-stained pavement. Franklin stepped out his cane, tapping lightly as he walked inside. Behind the counter sat Derek Fulton, 31, lean, restless, and scrolling through videos on his phone. His gelled hair held its shape like it had been frozen in time. Boots propped up on the desk, he barely acknowledged Franklin's entrance. Franklin cleared his throat softly. "Engine's making a sound," he said. "Something loose, maybe. Happens when I accelerate." Derek glanced up lazily, taking in the marine cap, the sweat-darkened shirt, the scrape on Franklin's hand, still raw from the fall at the gas station. His eyes flicked to the Dodge parked outside. "That's yours?" he asked. Franklin nodded. Derek scoffed. "We don't really work on antiques. Parts are impossible. Not worth the time, honestly. I'll pay in cash," Franklin offered. The mechanic shrugged. "Not about the money. Sometimes it's just better to let things go." Franklin held his gaze for a moment, then nodded once. He didn't argue. He never did. From across the shop, the soft clink of a mop handle in a bucket broke the silence. Monica James, the janitor, mid-40s, brown-skinned hair pulled back in a loose bun, paused mid-clean. She had watched the exchange from a quiet corner, a faint frown tugging at her brow. As Franklin turned to leave, Monica stepped closer but didn't speak. She opened the door for him, her eyes holding an apology. Her mouth didn't quite shape into words. "Sorry," she finally whispered. Franklin offered a tired smile. "Not your fault." He eased himself back into the driver's seat, the pain in his hip pulsing like a stubborn drumbeat. Just as he was about to turn the key, Monica stepped to the open window. "I saw what happened at the gas station," she said, voice low. Franklin didn't respond. "They don't know who you are," she added. His answer was quiet, almost buried beneath the sound of the engine starting up. "Don't need to." doesn't change how they see me. With that, he pulled away the Dodge, coughing as it rolled back onto the road. The streets passed in a blur. Crosswalks, traffic lights, billboards. Everything moved, but nothing noticed. Franklin stopped at no other shops, spoke to no one else. The weight in his chest had nothing to do with age or injury. It was the ache of being unrecognized, not for glory, not for fame, but simply for being human. At Holloway Park, a sliver of green wedged between housing developments, Franklin parked beneath a crooked oak tree. It was a familiar place, quiet and mostly ignored, just how he liked it. He stepped out, walked slowly to the bench near the rusted jungle gym and sat. His cane rested beside him, his hands folded over his lap. No one looked, no one waved. But Franklin had long since stopped expecting them to. The breeze at Holloway Park was warm and soft, but Franklin Ward barely felt it. He sat on the worn bench like he had 100 times before staring at nothing. Kids shrieked faintly in the distance. A jogger passed behind him, music leaking from their earbuds. No one stopped. His cane leaned at an angle beside him, forgotten. He reached slowly into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out the old leather sleeve. Inside, the photograph had worn thin along its edges. 8 young men in jungle fatigues, mud-slicked and grinning, each face lined with the shadow of having survived. Behind them, the canopy of Vietnam in 1971 loomed like a ghost. Franklin ran a thumb over the back of the photo. The ink was nearly gone, but he didn't need to read it to know what it said. The ones who came back. Laughter broke his reverie. A group of teenagers strolled past on the walking path. One pointed, grinning. "Yo, zombie, Grandpa's back," another chimed in. "What's he waiting for?" A telegram from the Civil War. Their cackles trailed off as they disappeared down the trail. Franklin didn't move. He'd heard it all before. He didn't hate them. He didn't even blame them. They had never learned any better. He folded the photo carefully, slid it back into its sleeve, and reached deeper into his coat. From a hidden pocket, he pulled out the card, laminated, creased, yellowed at the corners. On it, a single phone number. No name, no insignia, no instructions beyond 4 words, emergency use only. Echo 7. He'd been given it in a canvas tent outside Hugh in 1971 after the unit disbanded, and each man returned home to whatever version of peace he could manage. "Call this only when you're out of options," the captain had told him. "No explanations, just your name." Franklin had never used it. Not when his wife died, not when his son died, not when the world stopped seeing him. But something in him stirred now. It wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge. It was something quieter, older. It was memory standing up and clearing its throat. He pulled a flip phone from his jacket, ancient, scratched, but still functional. He opened it. The screen blinked weakly to life. His thumb hovered over the keypad. The numbers came to him without thought. He dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3, then click. A voicemail clipped and professional. "Unit Echo 7 secure line, verify." Franklin closed his eyes, took a breath, felt his spine straighten, not out of pride, but from discipline that had never left. "Staff Sergeant Franklin Ward," he said clearly. "Call sign Kodiak 5. Operation Iron Vow, 1971. There was silence. Then standby. The line clicked again. Franklin stared ahead at the setting sun, expecting nothing, expecting perhaps only closure. But then, a new voice, lower, familiar in a way that twisted in his chest. A voice worn by years but still sharp. "Ward, it's been a long time." Franklin sat up straighter. "General Rourke." "Still breathing," the man said. "I need the team," Franklin replied quietly but without hesitation. Another pause. "No questions," Rourke said. "Help is coming." And the line went dead. Franklin closed the phone slowly. The breeze brushed his cheek like a passing memory. For the first time in decades, he felt the impossible begin to stir hope. It began 47 minutes later. A matte black SUV rolled into Holloway Park without fanfare. No sirens, no markings. It parked in the shade behind the old maintenance shed, and its tires barely crunching the gravel. A second SUV followed, then a third, then 2 more from different directions. Children stopped mid-play. A jogger slowed, pretending to stretch, but watching. A woman tugged her child closer as a quiet shift settled over the park. Something was happening. They just didn't know what yet. Franklin Ward remained seated on the bench beneath the crooked oak. He hadn't moved since the call. He didn't need to. The positioning, the timing, the silence. They all spoke a language he knew by heart. This wasn't a reunion. This was an operation. Doors opened in unison. No shouts, no wasted movement. Just men, some gray-haired, some balding, all older than most would expect, stepping out in plain civilian clothes. But they walked like soldiers, their backs straight, their pace measured. Each one wore a black t-shirt with a faded insignia on the chest, a falcon with wings outstretched, soaring through a ring of stars. Echo 7. From the lead vehicle, a tall man emerged, his beard neatly trimmed, his navy jacket buttoned despite the heat. He moved with calm precision, scanning the park before his eyes settled on the man on the bench. He approached and knelt down, not out of weakness, but respect. "Staff Sergeant Ward," he said, voice low, but firm. Echo 7 reporting, as requested. Franklin blinked once. His throat tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "General Rourke," he murmured, "you really came." Rourke stood. "Always," he said, "all of us, or none of us." One by one, the others gathered behind him. Medic tech sniper comms. No formation called yet. They stood in perfect symmetry. A circle, a wall. Then came the roar. The same four bikers from the Wenny station, oblivious to the unfolding shift, tore into the park. Engines revving, tires spinning across grass, laughing as they performed donuts near the playground. Mockery still fresh in their mouths. They hadn't seen the SUVs. Not yet. But as they came closer to the bench, one of them finally slowed. His eyes narrowed. Confusion flickered. The laughter caught in his throat. The others noticed the silence too late. Franklin didn't move. He simply watched. Patient, like always. General Rourke stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every motion was deliberate, focused. Boots crunching softly against the earth. The lead biker, a wiry man with a skull tattoo curling up his neck, stiffened. "Who the hell are you people?" he muttered. Rourke didn't answer. Because the answer was already standing in front of them. The crowd had begun to gather. Joggers, parents, bystanders. Drawn by the quiet power of the scene. Phones lifted, cameras rolled. But none of it mattered to the men in black. They hadn't come for show. They had come for Franklin Ward. General Rourke turned slowly, letting his eyes scan the growing crowd. Parents stood frozen beside strollers. Teenagers with basketballs hung back, unsure. Every phone was now lifted, recording, yet no one dared speak. He faced the bikers. "You put your hands on Staff Sergeant Franklin Ward," he said, his voice firm but even. "A decorated United States Marine. A man who carried wounded soldiers through enemy fire in the jungles of Vietnam. A man who saved 11 lives while bleeding from his own side." One of the bikers scoffed, half bravado, half fear. "That's just some old man," he muttered. "You're making this up." A figure stepped forward from Echo 7. Major Lucas Tran, his posture rigid, silver streaks at his temples, eyes dark with memory. From around his neck, he pulled a chain. On it hung 2 dog tags and a silver star, gleaming faintly in the sunlight. In 1971, Tran said clearly, this man held the line against a North Vietnamese regiment while our squad was being evacuated. I was the last one out, barely breathing. He stayed behind and made sure I got to that chopper. He turned to the crowd. "I lived. My daughter lived because he didn't let me die. You want proof? I'm standing right here." There was silence. Then a murmur. A woman took off her sun hat. A man removed his ball cap. One by one, heads began to bow, not out of pity, but shame. Recognition. The skull-tattooed biker looked pale now. His cocky stance faltered. "We didn't know," he said softly. Rourke didn't flinch. "That's the problem," he replied. "You didn't want to." A younger biker, barely more than a teen, stepped forward, voice tight. "My grandfather. He served too. In Nam. If he saw what I did today." He trailed off ashamed. Franklin finally spoke. His voice was gravelly but steady. "Then honor him," he said, "by becoming a man he'd be proud of." The boy nodded once, slowly, unable to meet his gaze. From the final SUV, another figure emerged. An officer in formal dress uniform carrying a polished wooden case. He approached Franklin with quiet reverence and opened the box to reveal a newly minted silver star. "Sir," he said, "your original medal was reported stolen in 1986. The Department of Defense authorized this replacement. We've been trying to locate you for years." Franklin stared at the medal, eyes flickering. I didn't keep it for the medal, he said quietly. I kept it for the memories. The officer saluted. You have both again, sir. The town stood still. No speeches. No further protest, only the weight of truth and the collective realization of what had been ignored for too long. A ripple went through the crowd, respect where mockery had stood. In front of everyone, Rourke turned to Franklin and placed the medal in his hand. You stood when others fell, he said. We never forgot, and now neither will they. Franklin nodded slowly but said nothing. He didn't need to, because for the first time in decades, people weren't looking through him. They were seeing him. By nightfall, word had spread far beyond Holloway Park. What began as quiet murmurs among onlookers became local headlines, then statewide stories. Decorated war hero assaulted in broad daylight. Community rallies to honor forgotten Marine. For the first time in decades, Franklin Ward had become visible, but not for the reason he ever asked for. At the old church on Maple Street, the pews overflowed. Folding chairs lined the aisles. Strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, some still in their work uniforms, others in suits and ribbons they hadn't worn since the military. At the front, Franklin sat with Echo 7 behind him like a silent wall. Not guards, but family. A banner hung simply, honor where it's due. The mayor stepped to the podium, her voice trembling at first. For 50 years, Franklin Ward walked our streets, pumped his own while sat alone on our benches, and we never saw him, we never asked. We just passed by. She paused, her gaze sweeping the bowed heads. Today we remember not just his service, but his quiet dignity, his refusal to let bitterness take root, his reminder that character doesn't retire. When it was Franklin's turn to speak, he rose slowly. The aches were still there, but they felt lighter now. I didn't call my unit for recognition, he said simply. I called because I was starting to forget who I used to be. He let the words settle. And maybe I needed to remember that we once lived by a rule: we don't leave our own behind. He looked out over the crowd, faces that had walked past him just days earlier without a second glance. I'm not angry, he said, but I ask you, look harder, look closer. That man pushing a cart, that woman sitting alone at the bus stop, they've got stories too, and they won't be in your phones. A murmur of agreement moved through the church. Then from the back, a small boy stepped forward. Clutching a handful of wildflowers, he walked shyly toward Franklin. My dad says real heroes don't brag, he whispered. Franklin knelt down, accepting the flowers with a hand on the boy's shoulder. Your dad's right, he said softly. And sometimes, real heroes just need to be seen. And in that moment, under the vaulted ceiling of a small-town church lit by quiet reverence and the weight of truth, Franklin Ward was seen. Franklin Ward never asked to be honored. He never raised his voice. He simply lived with quiet dignity until the day the world could no longer ignore him. His story reminds us that respect isn't something you earn once. It's something a nation must give again and again, especially to those who sacrificed everything for it. So the next time you pass someone on the street who seems invisible, remember they might just be the reason you get to walk free today. If this story moved you, comment respect below. Share your own story of unseen heroes, because some people carry history in silence and they deserve to be heard. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that prove honor never fades. It just waits to be seen.